Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, and Laila Tov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. I hope this finds you well, wherever you are at. This is Carrie. Again, I was inspired to do another breakdown on a verse from a conversation I was having with someone. And when I looked at this verse, because of some of the indoctrination that I have come out of, it was interesting to see the pull that I was having within from that which I was told was, and what the translators put forth as to what I was seeing now. My heart is that, as my husband has said for many years in our household, change does not happen without application. So in looking at these sacred writings, when we first look at it, it is a mirror that allows us to see the reflection within it, so that we can then see as it. It is a measuring place, as our judging is only meant to be that which we judge within us, not to judge others. But there are standards and measurements that we are to become as the greater measure of who we are is then revealed to us. And these are one of those verses that in looking at it, I want to look and see as it. And so I want to share it with you today as we continue to take our thinking and bringing it up a little higher than it was the moment before, so that we can continue to be changed and become in the likeness of Yeshua, picking up the mantle of that which he left to us in the process of us walking and becoming and declaring the way of one. Let me show you what scripture I want to share with you today. We are coming from Isaiah 53, verse 5. The mechanical translation reads, "But he," well, I'll say this first. Anything that has been placed within these brackets were added. It's not part of the original text. The translators put it in for continuity within the writings themselves, but it was words that they put in, not what is really there. So I'm going to read the mechanical translation without those words. "But he, wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement for our peace upon him, and by his stripes are healed we." We're going to look at this word by word, and hopefully I won't be too long. There's a lot of information that is contained within each Hebrew word, and that's why in the English it pales in comparison, as it is a dimmed reflection of that which has really been penned for us to take to heart. When we look at the first word, it is a word that, if you don't know what it's being connected to, it it's quite amazing to see. It's used many times and people would glance over it, and the only way that you would know of its value and importance is if you knew the actual Hebrew letters. So we can take a look at all of this, and we could also just simply say that it is of self. Itself, it could be this or that, or as, or are. So this word right here, as I'm seeing it, is the place of the ego, of the self, where we choose this or that in the system of duality. When we go back, we can see that what was added to the word was the vav on the prefix side. Anything on the prefix has to do with mother. And as it is a nail or a tent peg that connects, and one that has a bent head, this is one who is connected to mother, that has been and is in the place of humility, that is humble, and is teachable. And when we look at the letters, we have the revelation of one. The hay and the aleph are representations of spirit. We call it the spirit breath, as the hay is the exhale of revelation, and the aleph is the inhalation of the revelation of one. This is the spirit breath. Hava is also a Hebrew word that means to breathe, to be a breathing one, and it is connected to the word ava, which means desire. One who desires to be connected to the revelation, or the revelation connecting to oneness. That is all contained within this first word, as it pertains to self, as the ego that is learning through spirit, this or that. Moving on to the next word, we have the word that means wounded. And when we take a look at the deeper message of wounded, and knowing that this is regards to self and choosing this or that in the system of duality, the chet lamed means to bore, or to wound, or to dissolve. It can be many other things as well, figuratively to profane a person, place, or thing, to break one's word, as an example, to begin, as if opening by an opening wedge, to play the flute. When we take a look at this is a primitive root, and we know that we are talking about self and this or that. It is our ego that gets wounded, and it can be pierced. But all of this is meant to be a beginning for us, as if it's an opening wedge, or potentially a door that just gets cracked open, that brings forth the revelation. What wounds us? Now, the mem, being on the mother side, is a representation of the waters of chaos. But what you do not see is the mem sophit behind it. And mem sophit has to do with the threshold of crossing over into something different, the place that is at the end. So if this word has the meaning of beginning, then there is an end. There's the waters that present themselves as chaos, as a representation of mother, that hides the still waters of father that are behind. It is the waters of chaos that will cause us to be wounded, our ego, as we are navigating and trying to grasp a hold of the revelation of oneness. So we are born through the waters of chaos, into the waters of chaos, through the veil of forgetting. And what wounds us is that when we come into this world, we find that we are set apart, meaning we are separated. And it is through the twin teachings of light, of the mother and of the father, that are meant to instruct us, so that we can overcome and find life through the covenant, through the twin teachings as a pattern that comes from the Ark of the Covenant, the cherubim on top, one male, one female, that are part of the Ark of the Becoming, so that we can be instructed through our wounds and come out through the waters of chaos. In our transgressions, we can take a look and go a little bit deeper to see what this word means in its root. A revolt, national, moral, or religious. A revolt, to rebel and to transgress, to break away from just authority, to quarrel. Many of us right now are coming into the place where we are looking into what the sacred writings are saying, which is what I am doing here, versus what the Church of Rome has put forth as the translations that we have put as our firm foundation, as these things are being shaken right now. So, this word having to do with rebellion against authority, or against religious practices. When we take a look at what is being added, we have the mem on the front, again on the prefix, and we have a nun vav on the suffix. In the place of this being a rebellion against that which is put forth, that which the church would say that we are transgressing against their standards. What do we see here? We have an added mem, which again is the waters of chaos. This is mother, where she births us into the system. And then on the suffix side, we have a risen nun and a vav. The nun is pertaining to the spiritual path, the seed of life that is given by Father. It is on the suffix side. This is one who has changed flesh, that is not of the material world, but of the risen nature, of perpetuity. Seed that goes forth, that is a propagation of heirship, that gives us a strong base to stand upon. This is not fallen flesh, this is risen flesh. So this word is not and cannot mean that we are in rebellion to the things of the spiritual path. We may be in rebellion to the religious path, which has not taken us out of the waters of chaos, but kept us in it. Mother's teaching leads us through the mouth that speaks revelation of the sacred languages, so that we are pierced as we go through the consuming fire that gives us the power, means, and direction to be able to see the Father's spiritual path in which we connect to Him in meekness, power under control, having a life that has been resurrected into new flesh. This has been because of our bruising, and in reality this word, when we look into it, it's more deeper than just bruises. What we look at is that crumbling, bruising, to beat into pieces, to break into pieces, but also comparing what this other word says, meaning to crush. The hay and the olive are interchangeable. Again, spirit breath, inhale and exhale. So a revelation that comes to us can crush us. And when that revelation comes, changing to the olive as being one that has connected to this revelation, it can cause us to crumble into pieces. When we take a look at how it has been written, we can see that through the waters of chaos that we are born into, as the waters of chaos are connected to our veil of forgetting, it is those waters, the living water teachings, that are the door that we are supposed to grasp, the door to the inner man that reveals to us the weak and feeble position that we are in, that reveals that which we need in order for us to deliver ourselves from that which makes us weak and feeble. It makes us thin. By grasping a hold of the sacred languages that put forth these revelations, this is a cup that has been pierced and made full, that has grasped a hold of the oneness principle into unity through instruction, now as one who can teach that which they've learned, by possessing the authority that comes from the oneness unity, which is the thousandfold Christ measure. This is one who's been given the staff of authority that can speak these revelations, because it was first revealed to them, which crushed them, and then shattered them into pieces in order for them to be put back together made into one. Examining all the pieces, grasping a hold of what was necessary, casting that away which no longer served, to make them one. As far as iniquities go, this word, when we take a look at it in its root, is important for us to see this, comes from the word ava. We must always take it to the root to see what source, creator, the center of our being, has in this word, in being a static position, the place of potential with no distortion, 0 point. This word means to crook. So what are we seeing? To crook those who have the eyes to see that which is necessary, that gives them the power, means, and direction to overcome their fallen flesh, as the fallen flesh has the beast ego attached to it. This is tapping into the fountain that is placed within, that connects you to revelation. So a crooked path, one that is crooked and bent, not only is meant to humble you, but to give you the eyes to see, so you can actually connect to revelation. How do you know what straight is unless you first go on a crooked path before you find the straight one? The way this word is written, from its first movement, has the fallen noon added to it, and before it had a hey. This hey was removed from us. This is the revelation of who we are, our highest self, our highest potential, in the place of connecting back to that what was taken. Our whole journey in the fallen flesh is so that we can find the revelation of our higher self. So we are given the fallen flesh nature to be able to walk in this world experiencing this or that, the crooked path before finding the straight one, because we've been entering in through the waters of chaos. Again, notice how all these words have an added mem in front of it. The waters of chaos are the veil of forgetting. So once again, we have the veil of forgetting that we go through so that we can find the living water teachings of Mother and Father that will show us what we need by tapping into the fountain that resides within, that reveals to us how to elevate our flesh nature so that we can be connected to not our fallen flesh, but we can find the spiritual path that raises us up, that which produces an air, that which is of perpetuity for generations to come, as this is connected to genetics and our seed line. This is giving us a strong base to stand upon. That fallen noon was put into a risen noon status in the place of the root. So this being is now completely changed and transformed, carrying the mark of the sign of the covenant of the Father, connected to him as one who no longer judges, meaning they are exempt from judgment. They are given the power that comes from the Father, the power that comes from one who gives, because they went through the door of the inward man and dealt with their fallen flesh and delivered themselves, now being made anew, having new flesh, standing connected to Father in meekness, power under control. This is something that I do not normally see. Having a noon Sophite and then another noon added. This is what is called between, as the covenant of pieces, divided the noon from the right and the noon on the left. These are the division of Mother and Father that are one, that are presenting the same message from different source as far as a different face, a different fractal of the same gem. One face representing the divine masculine, which has been risen, and then the divine feminine that has been added to make one new. And in the middle of the pieces, walking through, where the fire and the torch goes, is the covenant of one love that gives us power, and it is given to those who give. Now we have the next word for chastisement. Taking it down to its root, we can see that chastisement, reproof, warning, or instruction, also restraint, but it is from yasar, and yasar, yod, semek resh, to chastise, figuratively, literally with blows, or figuratively with words, to instruct. So moving on, we can see the yod was removed from the root, and we have again mem vav. It's again another mem, as the waters of chaos. So the waters of chaos, our veil of forgetting, is meant to instruct us. And you may see it as physical blows, as chastisement, as reproof, but it's meant in its root for instruction. And it is the living waters of chaos that actually produces the instruction, the waters of instruction, mother first before father. As Yeshua was a representation of mother, who said, "No one comes to the Father but through me," through the mother's instruction, through divine masculine that would then reach forward and connect to the divine feminine, bringing forth the sacred wedding, which is revealed within the Semek itself. This is a symbol of the wedding ring and the signet ring. So one who's come through the waters of chaos, connecting in humility as a humble, teachable one, is one who will become married and receive the signet ring as one hedged in, supported, propped in, and shielded with a shield of thorns, in order to raise themselves from being poor and destitute to now becoming a first fruit leader, because they went through the living water teachings in the time of the chaos to be raised up in order to lead. This was their instruction. And what did it lead to? To peace. When we take a look at this word, it is much deeper. The root, if we go and trace it back, you can see how this word morphs and why it changes. So in the static position, in the place of 0 point, the place of potential with no distortion, it has this meaning. It means to be safe in mind, body, or estate, to be completed, to be friendly, to reciprocate in various applications. This is the place of completion, in the place of 0 point where there is no distortion, where we have now been made as completed, where we are safe in mind, body, and estate. What activates this in our life to make this fully manifested in the fuller message, changing it to becoming well, happy, and friendly, and also having welfare, health, prosperity, and peace, is that we must connect to source within. We must connect with our heart and have it pierced so we can be made full and completed in living this dream that we have gone through, where we are filled up, set apart, and set above. Because on the inside, we've been instructed as we've connected, as we are of the name of Shem, of the living water, or the living fire and the living water, that makes us completed, sound, and whole, as the instruction came to us on the inside when we connected to our heart and connected to the place of source creator within. And once again, we see that added to this word we have the nun, vav. This is a very significant change that is given to us through the spiritual path that we find a father. Mother is about the golden rule, about the external orientation of how we operate with other people, how we treat others the way we want to be treated. But the spiritual path that is presented to us on Father, which has nothing to do with the material world, but has everything to do with the choices that we make in life to build ourselves a strong foundation for perpetuity, a seed of life, is meant so that we can connect in meekness to the Father, which is power under control. Moving on to the next word, upon him. This root of this word means to ascend. It is through our peace that we find, through the spiritual path of Father connecting in meekness, that will lead us onto the path of ascension, where we have the eyes to see the purpose of the instruction meant to give us the power of the Father, as one who radically gives through the power of meekness, because this power is under control. This is one who has gone through the way of instruction, who has been given the staff of authority because they went through the waters of chaos and they found the door that was opened up for them, this revelation, to deliver themselves from the beast ego nature into connecting to becoming one with the Father. Then we move on to stripes. In looking down in the root as we chase it. And here we're talking about bound with stripes, a wheel, black and blue mark itself from bruises. But when we chase it down again to the place of 0 point, static potential energy, it has several meanings, which you already saw. But when we look at this, to join, literally or figuratively, also specifically by means of spells, to fascinate. I take this word of spells and we can see it many different ways, but spelling, as we know, is taking letters and joining them together to create something that changes energetically through a frequency. Many people do not know this, but spells are cast using different symbols than English. English is a dead language. It has no vibrational frequency. A letter A is simply a letter A, where the aleph has a vibrational frequency that affects matter. It's called cymatics. It's the study of how sound affects matter. Hebrew, Aramaic, Sanskrit have these types of frequencies. So when we are looking at the Hebrew words, this is a mean of spelling letters, putting them together, that would change matter, that would change your frequency. And it fascinates. Draw irresistibly the attention and interest of someone. This is very important for us to comprehend when it comes to the languages of spelling Hebrew words that would draw us irresistibly into the fascination of what is being shared through the sacred letters. And it means to join. So when we take a look at how this word morphed, here's our root. What do we see here? We see the Vav, which means connecting to Mother in humility and meekness. We see the Vav connected to Father through the power of meekness, which is power under control. We also see the Bet that is added and the Tav. And these are important to be able to comprehend, because these two letters are what was added to the very first word that we see in Genesis 1:1, Bereshit, which in the summary is choose as a sovereign to build the covenant of one love. Here we have the Hebrew word that means to inscribe and to mark with a mark. This is the mark and sign that we are looking to be marked with. This is the covenant of one love, where we are connected to Source, being filled up, set apart, and set above, as one who no longer judges. And we did this by connecting to both Mother and Father, their teachings, Yod He Mother, Vav He Father, to build ourselves spiritually on the inside, because we were once set apart on the outside. And when we look at the first word, when we were up here, this was about the self that had been set apart, that was on the outside as divided and separated. We are building ourselves on the inside as we were once separated. And we are building ourselves on the inside as well as the outside through the covenant of life. This is a symbol meaning life. It is spelled Chet Yod Tav. The word Chai is life. This is the life of the covenant. Bar is one who is an heir to the throne. This is also one that means, the word that means to select, to purify, pure and innocent. grain that has been winnowed, which is attached to the barley bride. So what we see, we have a bet and another bet that have been divided. And in the middle of the two bets, again, the covenant of the pieces of mother and father is where we find life, and we find it abundant. It is through the twin building processes of the Bet Tav, the two paths of the 22 letters. First path, Hebrew, divine masculine. Second path, Aramaic, divine feminine, where they are brought together as life of the covenant of one love that raises us up from our poor and destitute place so that we are marked with the extravagant love, the fingerprint of Father, filled up in power and meekness as one who no longer judges. We are changed and we are healed. Rapha is the root. This is the same gematria for the word that means fruit. The letters are in a different order, but they mean the same thing. It means to heal, to make healthful. Healers and physicians, hurts of nations involving restored favor. The noon has been added to the front. This is Mother's spiritual path that starts the process of healing, raising us up from being poor and destitute through the sacred languages that are meant to pierce us within, to put forth a seed vision that would produce the revelation of one, that we are all one. This is the restoration of the nations. This is the restoration of who we are, from the place that we were once separated, but now we have found life. And this is connected to, as being the bride, through the instruction that comes so that we can be made new. New flesh, risen flesh, no longer corruptible but incorruptible, that is connected to Father. The teaching shepherds of life that come with the spiritual path that they want you to connect to, because it will become the healing, as we revealed that we are all of one. So in review, we start out through the ego of the self, choosing this or that, as it is the spirit breath that connects to us the revelation that we are all one. It is our desire and our longing for. Through our wounds and that which we are subjected to, we are then instructed, because we come through the waters of chaos where we forget, so we can find life through the covenant, through the twin teachings, the twin teaching shepherds of light that have the staff of authority that teach the way of the mother and the father, divine masculine and divine feminine. Taking that which has been seen as a rebellion, because it is rebellion against that which is not of the oneness principle. In the waters of chaos, when we come through them, the sacred languages produce that which we need, going through the fires of purification that gives us the eyes to see the spiritual path of Father, connecting to Him, which through the religious authorities we will see as we are walking through rebellion, as anything that divides us and sets us on the outside of the covenant of the revelation of one, we are opposing. In the process of our crushing, we are crumbled into pieces so that we can pick them up, because it is the waters of chaos that do this to us. But through Mother and her teaching, it is the door to grasp a hold of the power of the revelation that we are all one. We take our crooked paths in order to find the straight, the this or that. As we came through the veil of forgetting, we then are given the eyes to see how to connect to the spiritual path that will lead to the mark of the Father as one who no longer judges, being given His power of a transformed life of new flesh, walking in the power of meekness. That is meant to instruct us. These waters are veil of forgetting. helped to humble us so that we could find the sacred wedding, be married, given the signet ring, where we are supported and protected, hedged in, propped up and supported, raised up to be a first fruit leader, who has completed their journey, who now has prosperity, who's safe in mind, body, and estate, because they went through the fires of instruction, where they were pierced and connected to the heart within, where Spirit and Father dwells, the Source, the Creator. As these waters of chaos became our instructor, Mother first, Father hidden, that is then given to us the spiritual path through our daily manna, so we could be part of, as a stringed instrument that has new life, transformed and connected to the power of Father through meekness. This is our process of ascension, where we know the instruction and why we are being instructed in the way of light, so that we could receive the power from the Father. As we opened our hand, as we radically give that which we have been connected to, which is of one love. It was through the divided teachings that were separated intentionally so that we could build and find life. Mother and Father, which is the spiritual building process of family, raising us up to be first fruit leaders, where we are fully marked, carrying the mark, having connected to Mother in humility and Father in meekness, as we no longer judge, as we are now healed. But we had to take Mother's spiritual path first. And this was so, as the bride, we could connect to and become teaching shepherds of light, who were given the staff of authority, having new flesh, being born again as new, connecting to our power given to us by Father, as those who are no longer corruptible, but are in incorruptible flesh, having the power of meekness that was revealed to us as we came in as self, revealing to us, because we chose to connect in humility, the revelation that we are truly connected as one. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.